Good morning. In this video, I want to briefly look at the issue of the going back to the Civil War and the lies that are being perpetuated by certain people. Breaker, for instance, Robert Breaker. Hoffman has a footnote. William Grady is even deceived by this. It's called the myth of the lost cause, and it's lies. It's all lies made up to justify the South's attempt to perpetuate slavery. So let me read here from the work on the Patriots' History of the United States. And let's see what he says here. Lost cause theorists emphasize the irrelevancy of slavery as a cause of war and sought to make the conflict about economic issues such as tariff and cultural differences between the honorable South and the immoral North. Who does that sound like? Bob Breaker. They emphasized constitutional values and states' rights, not the issue of human chattel. But the record was quite different. Jefferson Davis had frequently spoken to the United States Senate about the significance of slavery to the South and had threatened secession if what he perceived as northern threats to the institution continued. In 1861, Confederate Vice President Alexander H. Stephens called the great truth of slavery the foundation and cornerstone of the Confederacy. They would have been, if the Confederacy had succeeded, they would have been the first state, the first nation based on racial superiority. The Confederate Constitution specifically provided for protection of the right of property in slaves. Negro slaves. So the author misses a point here. They put the word Negro slaves. It's not even slaves, but Negro slaves. Far from moving toward emancipation anywhere, the South, as Alan Nevins pointed out, was making slavery harsher and more permanent. Yeah, it's more difficult to free a slave now. Much more difficult. And they were not teaching their slaves anymore to read and write, and they were segregating them more, and because they're afraid of them. They're afraid of slave revolts. New laws reinforced slavery, throttled abolitionist materials, and spread the net of compliance to more and more non-slaveholding whites. Indeed, the best argument against the notion that the South had voluntarily given up slavery is that there was not that the South would have voluntarily given up slavery. Yes, that's the old argument. Oh, slavery would eventually have ended. That's what Breaker does tell you. They will tell you that. Oh no, it wasn't going to end. It wasn't going to end. These slaveholders were intent on keeping that as part of their way of life. It was money to them. Would have voluntarily given up slavery is that there was not the slightest indication of movement toward emancipation in any southern state prior to 1861. Prior to 1861. None of the states were moving that way anymore. They were before, right after the Revolution. States, like northern states had slavery, and they moved to emancipate their slaves. Slowly, slaveholding states ended, and then it stopped. And it became more financially lucrative to keep slaves. And that movement stopped, and then there was the reaction, and they doubled down on it. So a man is going to tell you lies like Robert Breaker. Can't be trusted. Can't be trusted to tell you the truth in the Bible. These are facts. But he's more concerned about protecting the reputation of his heritage. His great-great-great-great-granddaddy or something nonsense. He was a Baptist, They're attacking our heritage. These lost cause guys, they got this persecution complex. Like no one cares. No one cares. But they care. So they'll lie to you. Oh, you don't know the real history. You don't know the real history. He knows the real history. He's a student of history. Contrary to the perpetrators of the lost cause story, once the Southerners saw the war at their doorstep, their defense of states' rights and principles all but vanished as the Confederacy increasingly toyed with the notion of emancipating its own slaves if they would fight for the Confederate States of America. The first such recommendations came in February 1861, but most officials dismissed them. So they needed men. They were desperate now. That's why you see blacks in Confederate uniforms. Just like the North. That's why the North put blacks in uniform. They needed men. They needed men. And if the blacks hadn't blacks hadn't become fought in the Union Army, we would have ran out of men. They based that was the tipping point. That's what the key was, getting them, the blacks to volunteer and fight for their own freedom, fight for the freedom of the black people, the slaves, the freed slaves. And they were risking a lot more. And the big issue, the movie Glory is an excellent indication of what really happened. When they came in, they got half pay. They didn't get the same pay white people got. White soldiers got. And so they resisted that. And if they were captured by the Confederates, they would either killed outright, or they would be put into turned into slavery. You read this people's facts. Don't let this guy lie to you. This is all part of an entwined culture of lies and deceit. He goes to a Jefferson Davis monument. We can't tear down this Jefferson Davis monument, but he's trying to tear down Abraham Lincoln. And that guy, he's talking about the evidence he gives as a witness. What does a witness say? He says he was glad his sons did not have to grow up in a system of slavery. Well, that wouldn't have happened if Jefferson Davis had won. And underneath all this, people, and what everybody knows, there's a subtle aspect of racism. Very subtle. That's why he isn't. Oh, Ed, he's attributing things on. I don't believe it. One minute he's saying slavery is a good thing, and Christians are slaves. Next minute he's saying, oh no, it's a bad thing. But we weren't fighting for slavery. But it's in your Constitution. It's in the Confederate Constitution. By mid-1863, however, after Vicksburg fell, the Confederacy suddenly entertained arguments about emancipation. Cannot we, who have been raised with Negroes and know how to command them, make them more efficient than the Yankees can? Because now they were blacks in fighting for Union. Asked one proponent of arming slaves. The lost cause myth took root during Reconstruction, with pro-Southern writers emphasizing the corruption of federal occupation and the helplessness of the white citizens against the power of federal government, and the proportionally large numbers of blacks who went to the polls and voted Republican. They won't vote Democrat. They won't vote Democrat. So where did voter suppression happen, people? It happened in the North. It happened in the South. Because blacks voted Republican. That's history. Where did gun control laws start? In the South. These great proponents of freedom, for the Second Amendment. Well, the gun control laws started in the South to keep guns away from blacks. Neo-Confederate writers imaginative attempts to portray the antebellum South as a utopia were outrageously distorted and ultimately destructive. They planted in a large number of Southerners, though not the majority, the notion that the Confederacy had fought for important moral principles. That's what Blake is trying to say. They were trying to say on that lie. They were fighting for moral principles. They were fighting, the Yankees. They started the war and they invaded our freedom, for the states. And, we are fighting for moral principles. And they labored to move the argument away from slavery. So that's the whole goal. They're on the immoral side of history. The Confederate, they were fighting for an immoral system that was going to perpetuate a system of slavery, Negro slavery, by the way, not just slavery, Negro slavery, in their Constitution. And so they throw all the smoke up. Oh, they were good people in the South. Oh, they were Christians in the South. Oh, they were this. Oh, they were no one denies that. But they try to ignore what the real central point of the the immediate cause of the war, which actually led to the South leading. See, the North didn't fight initially to end slavery. See, that's the little trick they play on you. Well, they didn't fight. They weren't fighting to end slavery. Yeah, initially they weren't. They were fighting to preserve the Union. But the South seceded because of slavery. But they played a little trick on you. So they went to Lincoln. See, Lincoln was willing to compromise, and and Lincoln always said he couldn't touch slaves in the North, in the South. They were constitutional protected, as well as the Fugitive Slave Act. He was not popular with the abolitionists. Lincoln was not popular with the abolitionists. But as the war dragged on, he came to see slavery had to end, because this is always going to be a divisive issue, and this is the only way this had to be dealt with once and for all. But the South did leave because of slavery, because they wanted to expand slavery. Don't let them deceive you, people. Don't let them lie to you. If he lied to you, if a man will lie to you in one thing, he'll lie to you in something else, and that's what these guys all do. They lie to you in some other areas, and this is not a mistake. He brought this up himself. He brings this up. When he compares to Antifa, he's tearing down Lincoln's statue, who deserves to be on Mount Rushmore, for Jefferson Davis. Why does Jefferson Davis have a statue at all? He was fighting for one cause. Oh no, he wasn't. Yes, he was. Well, you guys were a breaker. Ask them about the Constitution. If they'd won, which Constitution would have? The Confederates would have been on a Constitution that said no one could stop them from making their Negro slaves into new territories. That's what we bothered them. But the point is ministers. The point is truthfulness. The point is this guy is lying to you, distorting history. No different than Antifa. And by the way, there's an element in the libertarian area that try to push that, also the libertarian group. Lincoln was a monster and everything else, and and you want to see the big thing is Lincoln, attacked constitutional rights and stuff like that, and the draft and stuff. See how they were on the constitutional abuses under Jeff Davis. They were doing the same thing Lincoln was doing. They were drafting people, shutting down free speech, you couldn't do this. They were doing everything Lincoln was doing. They ignore that part, though. They just go after Lincoln. So if Lincoln had lost, what you would have had? You would have had a nation based on the principle, the cornerstone, as Alexander Stevens says, of one race being superior to another. And that's the subtle implications of those who defend the Confederacy. It's subtle. They don't want you to believe that. They don't want you to not believe it, but know it. That's what they believe in. But it's there. It's there. That's what Jim Crow is based on. What Jim Crow thinks. And Bible teachers have been defending it. For years, hundreds of years. They just same thing. I still got guys defending. People defending it and stuff. You go back to the curse of Ham, and now you got the breakup between this major breakup going on in the Denver cult over interracial marriage. Yeah, this woman's dark. This woman's a dark woman. She can't be from Japheth. They're insane. But they're deceiving. Your responsibility is don't be deceived. As I said, Grady writes about it. Same way. Hoffman's got some notes in there attacking Lincoln. Here's another thing. It's like it's a virus that Ruckman spread through the entire that group that he was in. Anybody gets near Ruckman, that virus just infects him. He said, "Oh, you don't know real history. And then they bring up these little things. Oh, look at this black man. He was in the Confederate Army. Oh, look, he's a witness. And he says, oh, we weren't fighting, to keep slavery. And he goes, oh, see that? It doesn't matter what the individual thought he was fighting for. The fact of the matter is, if he had won, it would have perpetuated slavery. Oh, slavery was going to end on its own. Not according to the Confederate States, it would have ended. They planned to keep it, and they planned to expand it. So I'm going to stop and put this up. And any questions, comments? He's got an article. Blake has an article on his blog, why the Civil War is still important. Read it. Don't come to me and complain to me about it. He's the one making an issue out of the people. He'll come to me and complain to me, hey, just preach the gospel. Hey, just preach Bible doctrine. He brings up this issue, and you'll come to me and complain. Because it's important to these guys. There's a reason for it. There's a reason why these guys hold to that issue. And it's a subtle one. And they wave their King James Bibles around. And they act like we don't know history. Like, oh, they don't know. We got the real history. We're the real King James Bible believers. We're the real dispensationalists. So I'll stop here and put this up. Amen. Thank you.